Come on in to the Awaken to Yourself podcast, where we discuss how to develop a deeper connection to yourself and therefore manifest that which you desire. My name is Fiona Christie and I'm joined by my co-host, Diane Clark Manley. Let's dive into this week's episode. This week, we're discussing how to harvest abundant thoughts by becoming aware of exactly where thought fits into the thought wheel and what you can do to interrupt the pattern of unhelpful thoughts which could lead you down a slippery slope. Just a reminder that this series is called The Life Shift and it follows the modules from Fiona's course, The Life Shift with the Internalist Way. That's 12 modules which make up your own unique inner guidance system. In last week's episode, we talked about conscious and unconscious noticing, and today we're looking at the module called Thought. This module looks at the thought wheel and how thought follows observation and feeling and leads on to the all-important action. We also give you some tricks which will help you intercept when your thinking looks like it's leading you down a slippery slope. Did you ever stop and wonder why we say the phrase, "I lost my train of thought," or even why it's called a train of thought? Well, I've been pondering that one. Think of it, or that phrase, like a powerful freight train speeding along its tracks. Once you focus your attention on something, your thoughts follow suit, fast and unstoppable, just like that freight train. It's loaded with energy, charging forward on a single path. But remember, you have the ability to put the brakes on and change its direction whenever needed. You've probably noticed I'm flying solo this week too, while Diane recovers from a dose of something best left to rest in bed. I've been chatting to her, so you'll see some of her valuable input sprinkled through this week's episode as well. So let's begin with the first step to thinking the internalist's way. And that is to understand that thoughts create beliefs and thoughts come from observations. First you observe, then you have a thought about it. So the first step is noticing, which we talked about last week's episode, and then follows thought. We'll take a look at the thought wheel next, and once you understand it, it will help you stop thoughts from escalating. No matter where you are on the wheel, you always have a choice. You have at least 60,000, or some now say 70,000 thoughts a day, and it's probably increased because of all the cell phone device and I don't know how busy we are. Anyway, so we have 60,000 thoughts a day, all of which are vibrating at a certain frequency and attracting like thoughts to them. Most of them are not in your awareness, they're just happening. But your feelings are the fuel for thought. Your feelings are what turns thoughts into experiences in your life. Experiences follow you based on your thoughts and beliefs. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's take a look and discuss the thought wheel, which I developed as part of the Life Shift with the Internalist Way to give a visual reference. So for those of you who are listening rather than watching, I'll describe the wheel. It has 5 stopping points around the wheel. At the top and the starting point is observation. Then we move around in a clockwise circular motion to the next stop, which is feeling. After feeling comes thought. From our thoughts, our words, our feelings, and observations, we take action. And that's the 4th stop on the wheel. And the final stop is belief. So observation comes first on the wheel, and after observing something, a neural response is triggered, causing you to feel a certain way about it. Subsequently, your thoughts form based on these emotions. While some argue that thoughts precede feelings, scientific evidence shows that both are intrinsically linked, and I believe they serve as part of your internal guidance system. Positive feelings release neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, fostering positive thoughts. Negative feelings, conversely, trigger stress hormones like cortisol, leading to negative thoughts. These feelings and thoughts drive the action you take. The outcomes of these observations, feelings, and thoughts is that we take action, which then reinforces the neural pathways associated with your beliefs about yourself and your circumstances. And of course, belief is the last stop on the wheel. So we cycle around and around and around until we decide to intercept or stop and interrupt the cycle. And that's really why I really wanted to include thought in the internalist way, because it's such an important thing. And most of us, we just have thoughts all day long, obviously 60,000 as we've already discovered, but we don't take care of those thoughts and really notice what it is that we're thinking all day, every day. So this is kind of partly why I wanted to do this podcast, was so that I could really start maybe awakening a few people to, hey, I'd better take care and nurture these thoughts because they're creating my outcomes, or they're partly responsible for creating my outcomes. So being unconscious to the thought wheel is why people often keep experiencing the same repeat patterns in their lives, because they don't have an awareness of any tools to intercept those thoughts and feelings, or are not even aware of what they're thinking all day, every day. And that's one of the reasons why I created the life shift with the internalist way, so that I could have an internal guidance system all in one place. I mean, I developed it for myself first and foremost, that I could use at any time to steer me back on track whenever things like I veered off course, or I felt stuck with decision making, or I needed to get back in touch with me, or I needed a boost in my self-worth, or I wanted to connect with my spiritual side. Ralph Waldo Emerson has a great way of putting it when he says, "The ancestor of every action is a thought. Therefore, I believe we need to leave more room for the positive thoughts to arise." So whenever you feel frustrated because you don't seem to be getting to your destination fast enough, maybe that's because your thoughts, your words, and your actions are out of alignment. Here's Sally's example. She had a dream of buying her first home, and she told everyone she knew that she was going to manifest it. She was saving towards it, and it would happen. Meanwhile, every morning when she woke, her first thoughts were fearful. Things like, they're restructuring at work. What if I'm one of them? Then I won't be able to buy my house. She'd turn her phone on and read the latest news about the downturn in the economy. And every time she thought about saving, she felt deprived. She just wanted to be able to go out with her friends and have what she wanted. Eventually, these behaviors form a pattern. Some call it self-sabotage, but there's always a reason behind that behavior, and that's what fascinates me. I believe it's because we haven't uncovered the truth about what's causing our stuckness. There are layers and layers, and it's just so fascinating. I'll talk about that in a minute. You may have heard of neural pathways. A simple analogy to explain it would be like paths in the woods. The main tracks are worn, and you can tell where people have walked, and over time the track gets bigger and wider as more people flow through. That's what happens with our experiences as we see more evidence to support certain beliefs. The neural pathway gets wider. For example, if we were afraid of black cats because one scratched us at some point, and we've heard the superstition that black cats are scary, before too long we'd probably widen that neural pathway to include black dogs or grey cats. They're not black cats, but they look similar. That's why I included a pattern interrupt in the BS shift method, and also in the life shift with the internalist way. Unless you have a way of interrupting the pattern, it's pretty hard to shift it. Plus, it's much more fun digging underneath to find the hidden gems, and it's not nearly as scary as people tell you it is. In fact, it's actually, in most times, it becomes quite funny. Just like layers of an onion, one thought rehearsal at a time. What do I mean? Well, one of the questions I ask when talking or taking someone through the BS shift is, what thought patterns have you been rehearsing in order for you to feel this way? Why do I why do I use the word rehearsal? Because a rehearsal is a practice for the real thing, just like when you go to rehearsals for an orchestra or whatever. You're practicing because you haven't actually delivered the performance yet. The performance that you've been waiting for is your positive outcome. Most people come to see me because underneath all of the stories that they think are the reasons that they're stuck is the story of I'm not good enough, but it comes disguised in many different forms and has many different layers, just like the onion. The outer layers disguise what's truly at the core. It reminds me of the game that most kids used to play, well, in our neck of the woods anyway, at birthday parties, called Pass the Parcel. We'd start with a fully wrapped up parcel, wrapped up lots of different times. So we would pass the parcel around, and when the music stopped, the person with the parcel in their hand would get to peel off one layer of wrapping paper. Each time, the parcel would get closer to the gift inside, and nobody would know when the music was going to stop or when they'd get to the prize inside. So that's what we're trying to do with peeling back the thought layers. The thing is, you do with a BS shift get to the core, but it's the core of that layer, right? I just love this stuff because it's a forever thing. And that sounds daunting and, oh my God, I'm going to be in this washing machine forever. Well, no, because you get past that layer and then your life goes to the next level. Remember, we talked about vibrational energy, right? So you go to the next energy level in terms of how you're vibrating and what you're attracting to. You still attract something different, like, oh my God, life is such an amazing journey if you face it with fascination instead of fear. Anyway, that's another topic entirely. Let's move on. I have long believed that when someone is feeling down, their inner self is speaking to them, saying, you need to investigate your thoughts. I'm sometimes met with a resistance, and people say, oh God, it's just too scary. Well, I would argue that it's more scary staying stuck, not to mention frustrating. So consider the idea that feeling down is your intuitive nudge that you have uninvestigated thoughts that need the best detective on hand, and they need shifting. That's one of the reasons that I created the BS shift. At the time, I'd reached burnout and felt anxious and down. I wanted a method that included what then became the H step in the shift of the BS shift, which would unearth what was hidden underneath. So as I said back then, I felt anxious and down, and I used a few strategies like walking and surrendering and lots of other stuff, which helped, but I knew there was more. I wanted a method that would get to the bottom of what was causing the anxiety and feeling down. So sure, I could help it, but if I didn't unearth what lay beneath, then what was the point? I'd just end up back there again. So now I use the BS shift in conjunction with the life shift whenever I need to. This is a bit of an unusual question. Would you rather visit a clairvoyant or tarot reader than a life coach? I find human behavior fascinating, and I got into life coaching in the first place because I was fascinated with my own behavior, my action and inaction. I saw too that many were drawn to see a clairvoyant or tarot reader than a life coach, and I realized that's because they consider the life coaching process to be work, whereas seeing a clairvoyant, massage therapist or tarot reader or anything like that, you don't have to do anything. Well, that's partly true, And I'm not knocking any of those modalities, they're wonderful. But if you don't investigate your thoughts, you'll just keep experiencing repeat patterns over and over again. This whole podcast is about awakening to your full potential, developing a deeper connection to yourself, and therefore manifesting that which you desire. It's about learning how to come back to being your own sovereign being, using your own guidance to light the way. The world is at a point now where it's time for us to stand for ourselves, to listen to the wisdom that's already within us, and to step up and into the shoes we're here to fill. That means finding a way to overturn I'm not good enough, I'll be happy when, it's all right for them, they're married, young, pretty, whatever, I'm too stupid, old, not pretty enough, rich enough, etc. You know why? Because all of those statements are external and it's time to go internal. And that includes investigating your thoughts. One of the first things I learned about when I discovered personal development was affirmations. Over the years, I've deepened my understanding, and I believe that whilst affirmations have their place, they're empty promises unless you bring feeling and action into the mix. When affirmations are used alone, there's usually no beginning or end. The affirmations are the middle part. The beginning is your intention or your imagination. The middle is a well-rounded affirmation which is brought to life through visualization. Then comes affirmation, turning your affirmation into a question or action, together with gratitude for that which you do and don't yet have. I thought I'd include affirmations in this podcast because if you say or voice your affirmation, but your inner voice says, "Who are you kidding? You'll never do or get that," then it's probably not going to happen. If you're going to investigate your thoughts and over time change them, then affirmations could be part of the plan if you include them in the right way. So one simple way to get to include visualization, you can use your smartphone or cell phone. So you grab your cell phone and you look for your recorder app in there and you record your own voice walking you through a scenario, and then you play it back to yourself whilst visualizing the scene you set. This is so very true. What you plant today, you will harvest tomorrow. True of plants, but equally true of thoughts. And as with plants, you need to ensure they're planted in the right soil, the right position, and fed the right nutrients to grow into healthy, strong plants. So too with thoughts. So what can you do to begin changing your thinking? Well, you could start by noticing the words you use to describe yourself, your life, and others. Notice other people's language, actions, and behaviors. Are they supporting your life's journey or hindering it? And then it's time to intercept your thoughts that you've been rehearsing with a few tricks. That's good. What if? You're the meaning maker, and whose business are you in? And I'll break those down in the next slides. This episode includes loads of goodies, tips and techniques, so you might want to replay parts of it because I believe that thought is what's beneath a lot of the stuckness that people experience. The first technique I'll share is the "that's good" opening. So what you do to use it is whenever something doesn't go as you'd planned or hoped, is to say to yourself, "that's good," and then you add either "because" or "therefore" or "and so," or maybe you use all three. What does that have to do with thought? Plenty. It acts as a pattern interrupt for the thoughts that would in most cases, spiral downwards into a negative spiral. And instead, what this technique does is it encourages you to think of why that's good. Trust me, there is always a good spin. Next up is what if. So what you do is you ask yourself, what if that went true? What then? Or you might say, what if the opposite were true? This is particularly good when you're spending time in other people's thoughts or in other people's business, as I call it. In other words, you're making up stories about what others might think, say, or do. Then we have, what does it mean? You might want to jump over to our blog to learn more about You Are the Meaning Maker. But in the meantime, you can use this gem by asking, what have I made this mean? And then, what else could it mean? Our final trick is to use the whose business are you in question. I'll explain more with a story in a minute. So you would use it by reflecting on your thoughts and asking yourself, whose business am I in or was I in when I thought those thoughts? Or whose worldview was I in? Was I in mine or theirs? A clue would be when you think things like, they'll think blah, 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 or they won't want to blah, blah, blah. So I'll have a story in a sec. That last technique, whose business are you in? Well, I describe it using the story of, let's call her Liz. Liz had met Larry on Tinder and they'd just had their first date. So I asked Liz how it went, and she said, oh, it was great. He was lovely. So I assumed she'd want to see him again. So I asked her when her next date would be, and she replied, oh no, I don't want to see him again. So I asked her why, and her response was that he lives 2 hours away from me, and so he won't want to a long distance relationship. Plus he's retired and he won't want to do the things that I want to do. And since I'm working, he probably won't want a relationship with someone who's, he'll be looking for a relationship with someone who's retired like him. Whose business or worldview is Liz in? Is she in hers or his? I'd say she's in his. She's making up his mind for him. Poor Larry didn't even get to say what he thought. So if I'd asked him, his response may have been, actually, I've been thinking of moving anyway. And that's great that you're working because that gives me time to play golf and do the things I love to do, which I know you don't like doing. Those questions are a starting place. Change can be challenging on your own. So if you'd like help with your transformation, I'm only a phone call or message away. My aim with this podcast is to give you some tools to help you change perspective and to share our ideas. Are you tired of repeating the same old patterns in your life? Do you wish your life had a consistent flow? We've got 3 secrets for you so you can avoid coulda, shoulda, woulda. And I'll be happy when. So claim your free spot at the Life Shift Insights webinar, 3 secrets to attract what you desire in your life. You can watch it at theawakenedguru.com/free webinar -the-life-shift. We'll see you there. Thank you so much for listening to this episode about thought. Next week, we'll be exploring emotions, your inner guide. And if you haven't already, be sure to get on the list so you get advanced notice when our next episode goes live. Just head over to our website, theawakenedguru.com, and sign up for any of the freebies in there, and you'll get the alerts. See you next week.